So, hello, everybody. I am so happy to be able to introduce you to Katie Watts. Katie is somebody that I very fortunately got to sit next to at a Thanksgiving gathering here in Santa Fe. And just instantly, our conversation sprouted into a million directions, and I just found her super inspiring, which is really why I want you to meet her. I want you to get to know her. So, just to give you a little sense of this wonderful woman, she is deeply passionate about helping people of all ages, teams, organizations, creating healthy cultures, stronger relationships, and environments where everyone can truly thrive. And one of the things that I really love about Katie's background is that she's worked across so many different settings. She's a real synthesizer, and her journey has taken her from leading and training teams in the business world to becoming a teacher, an instructional coach, outdoor educator, even a principal, which is quite amazing. And she's got a master's degree both in correct me if I'm wrong, but curriculum and instruction and educational leadership. So you can totally understand how much I feel I can learn from her. And she's also served as the executive director of an adventure therapy nonprofit. How cool is that? And if that were not enough, she's also a certified yoga and mindfulness teacher and has developed a coaching approach that really brings together deep listening and emotional agility, systems thinking, and a genuine belief in people's capacity to grow and transform. And one of the things that especially resonates with me is her commitment to elevating the wisdom in the room. I've seen you write that before, and that just I really connect with that for obvious reasons, and all the ways that you help people and communities discover their own strengths and create meaningful and lasting change together. Now, one of the reasons that I am particularly excited to invite you, Katie, into this conversation is because so much of what you explore feels relevant to the Universal Love Curriculum, which is my labor of love, my baby. And as many of you know, the ULC isn't just about knowledge and information, it's also about helping kids and educators and whole communities develop greater self-awareness, emotional intelligence, empathy, connection, and well-being. And Katie's work offers some incredibly beautiful and practical tools for supporting that journey. I actually have her Katydid cards right here with me, and I have been working with them, and I can't wait to explore them together with all of you. And so we're gonna look at this emotional processing toolkit together, which is basically a creative resource that's designed to help people better understand and work with their feelings and their emotions through tools like body mapping and emotional identification and metaphor cards. And you can share much more about that. But I just can't wait to learn more about how this whole toolkit emerged. How it's being used and what insights it has to offer those of us who are working in education or community building and social emotional learning or just in relationships, which applies to everybody. And then I also really want to hear about a newer birth, a newer creative birth in Katie's ecosystem, which is a course called Leading with Steady Presence. So, Katie, welcome. I am so looking forward to our conversation with you.
Oh, Rosie, thanks. I'm so honored to be here with you in this space. And that was just such a lovely introduction. I'm really touched.
Well, I did my homework because I think you are worth knowing. People really need to know what
Oh,
you're up to. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And this is in a way kind of new connection for us. We're just getting to know each other ourselves. So for me, this is also just for me. I just want to hear your story. And I don't know how you, also, I just want to say leadership is a really big theme for me right now. I'm doing this whole project together with a partner called the 64 Songs of Awakening, which is connected to the
Yes.
Wisdom Keepers. And the first song we're going to release is the Wisdom Keeper of Leadership. It's leadership.
Mm,
So I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about that as well. But I thought first, if it's okay with you, we
yes,
could start with your Katydid cards, and you could
sure.
just share with us how did you come up with this? What motivated you? Because this is a big commitment to create something so practical and easy to use, and it's almost like the simpler it is, the harder it is to create. And I've been sitting with it
Mm.
and feeling so welcomed in. It's been so easy for me to engage with. So I'm just curious about this process and what's the story behind it.
Well, thanks, Rosie. Oh my goodness. So I never intended to create, and I've heard you say this too, I think, about your creation of your Oracle deck, that that was not like what you set out to do necessarily. And that was the case for me. So I was working in a school, several schools, helping support trauma-informed practices with that teachers building their capacity to support kids that had been impacted by trauma, but also just system-wide. How can we be better responding to each other and our nervous systems and understanding the language of the nervous system as well as emotional regulation practices. And some of the schools that I was in already had social emotional learning curriculums. Several of them had the Ruler program. I don't know if you've heard of this with Mark Brackett's work. He's out of Yale, and he created this Ruler program with a four quadrant identification, really, of where you're at in your emotional state
Mhm,
for students to be able to, and teachers to be able to identify. Am I in this red quadrant? Red meaning high energy, highly unpleasant, yellow meaning high energy, pleasant, green meaning lower energy, pleasant, blue meaning um, like less pleasant, lower energy, unpleasant, lower energy. With
mhm,
the idea that all emotions are welcome. It's this great tool. And on the grid, sometimes you just do a color and sometimes you choose a word, depending on where people are at. And
mhm,
as people build their emotional capacity, their emotional intelligence, their emotional literacy, all these words, it can just develop, right? And it's great. It's a great tool.
yeah.
And in particular, one of the kids that I was working with would always choose tired every single day. He was a
Mm,
kindergartner and he was choosing tired. And his teacher was, and there was a history of trauma in his life, and his teacher was noticing his behavior was escalating to things like kicking, throwing blocks,
mm,
some outward behavior that was really challenging. And yet he was still identifying all the time that he was tired. And so as we were working together to help him identify more closely what he was really feeling, he was disconnected from his body.
mm,
And I started this process just by drawing a body, rough outline of a body on a piece of paper. And together, and I was doing this also in other school settings to other classrooms, and I would always start with calm and say, how do you feel when you're calm? Let's draw on the body the different things that we feel. And I would invite people to think metaphorically, which a lot of times kids can do this. Some adults can, and some of us just don't think that way. But I was thinking like a bluebird in my heart when I'm calm. I feel this
mm,
like bluebird in my heart. I feel a tree in my belly. I feel really like solid. And anyways, this little boy says to me, I never feel calm in my body. And he's the boy that's answering tired every day. And so I said, oh, so let's just draw what you do feel. And I watched him and he's drawing flames and lightning bolts and like really intense bursts, all over this body image,
mm,
which indicated rage to me. He didn't have the language yet for the words to identify, what the sensations were. But the lessons in all of this, right, is that our bodies give us these sensations, and we're blessed with all these like interoception and all the ways in which we sense the world around us, and that our brain makes sense. Neuroscience, modern neuroscience tells us that it constructs emotions based on everything from our past experience and what we're experiencing in our bodies. So it's really valuable information that lives in our bodies. And watching all of this happen and doing this work and then training teachers and social workers on how to do this with their kids or with themselves to start getting in touch with how they're feeling in their bodies and then build the connection to emotion words. At the same time that I was doing this work in my personal life, I went through a really hard breakup. And as somebody, it just was a hard, change in life. And my son had a concussion, a really serious concussion, where he lost all of the memories for the whole previous month. Like his his whole depth perception was off. He was unable to like walk straight. It was just a very scary, hard time, lots of emotions. And I had just started my own business like several months before when all this was all happening. And I was doing this work and I thought to myself, because I tend towards, I don't know about you with your reactivity and patterns of dealing with emotions, but I tend towards toxic positivity or forced, more a gentle way to say it is more forced positivity with things like, oh, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience? And oh, this is a little bit challenging, but I really feel that this is going to make me stronger. I'm always looking to almost the outcome of whatever the hard thing is.
Mhm.
And since I was already doing all this work with these kids in these schools with emotions, I thought, what would happen if I just sat with my feelings? What might happen? And I started painting my feelings. So every day
Mhm.
I would choose at least one, I would take a chunk of time and just choose that time. How am I feeling in my body? And think about it metaphorically. How would I do this if I was painting an image? And that's how the cards developed. So I every day did this for more than a month. And I still do it. I don't do it every day quite as much. But what I noticed was that in this practice of painting metaphorically how I felt every day, I was integrated with my feelings rather than like angst of like, gosh, I feel something. I'm not really sure what it is. And I'm just trying to like do things to get away from it. Or this idea of like, let's just look on the bright side and make this all better. It was just being with the feeling
Mhm.
caused it to integrate, move through me, and then not have that any of that sort of unhealthy responses to it, or I wasn't finding myself reaching for these unhealthy coping strategies, perhaps. And and so as this was happening, and I was training teachers on the body mapping,
Mhm.
I thought to myself that we're uncomfortable with drawing or making their own images. And older kids too tend to like start to get some self-consciousness about
Right.
drawing. And so I thought, I wonder if, and I use card decks all the time for facilitating team building activities. I use postcards, I use pictures, I use all sorts of different decks. And so I thought, I wonder if I turn this into a card deck, if if it would be useful and people could use the image to place over the body instead of drawing. And then I just created a prototype and then was using that in schools that I was working in with just the cards and just the body image.
Mhm.
And then I distributed it to a few friends, special ed teachers, social worker, counselor, and had them kind of like give me feedback, try it out, see if, a principal using it with kids that coming into her office and that are dysregulated and can't really name their feelings, like try this out, try it out, tell me how you're using it. And then it was like, well, we really want words, emotion words to go with it. We really want
Mhm.
body sensation words so that, especially kids, say with autism or something, that they could start to match. Sometimes the metaphor of the picture really didn't connect then to the feeling. So like they could like manipulate with their fingers. And then other people were like, oh, we really like little manipulatives that go with the ruler program, this or
Yes.
with zones of regulation, which is another social emotional that uses the same colors, red, yellow, green, blue. So anyway, so that's just sort of how it developed. And then, I first just had like a creator make the images in like business cards, like I just printed them on business
Yeah.
cards. I could, that's all I could figure out. And then I was like, okay, so how do I create this into like a kit, And I found a game board maker up in Wisconsin that makes them. And so that's that's the evolution. That was a lot of talking. Sorry.
No, it's fantastic, and it's such a good model for the creative process. And that often when we really slow down enough to take care of what's happening in here, and we're not
Yes.
immediately trying to make it helpful to anyone else, like we're really doing
Yes.
it for our own self, then actually something of true service can be born. Like just that
Oh,
it's
beautifully said. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Mhm.
I'm so
Yeah,
I
because it wasn't like I set out like, oh, I'm going to create this product. I have my own business. Like even now people will ask me about it. Like, how's the Katydid card business going? It's like, well, that's only just like it's a tool. It's not, and I just use it with my clients and I sell it to people that want it. But it really like the intention was to support people in their regulation. And then like some schools are making their own. They're having their kids like create their own image set for their class and having a class set, or it's just become a lot of different ways of using it. So
Yes. And I mean, I can tell you, I completely relate to what you were saying in terms of like if I have a tendency, it's you called it like you call it toxic positivity, or what was the other one?
forced positivity.
Force. I'm like,
That's
oh
that's
yeah,
a little that's a little more gentle than the toxic, you know. And
yeah,
Susan David with emotional agility, she uses
yeah,
that language, and it's I like that forced because and it also is exactly what I do, you know. And a
yes.
lot of my growing up was like that too, you know, like let's look on the bright side and
Yes. And you know, in Gene Keys or Wisdom Keeper territory, there's a gift and a shadow that go together, right? Because if you didn't have that capacity to transmute pain into beauty or service or an offering, we wouldn't have this gift, right? It's just about knowing when it's time to do that and when you're
yes.
using it to bypass, you know, like an actual experience and abandon
Right,
yourself.
well said. And I
Yeah.
kept saying during the time once it started to like oh this like emerged that this could be a toolkit after I had been painting my feelings. It's like, oh, this is alchemy. That's what I kept saying to myself. Like this transmutation, the word that you just used of, you know, turning this like these painful, really hard things in my life into something that's, you know, compost, right? There's another
Yeah.
metaphor. This like richness that is helping me grow and deepen my intimacy with my own being and myself and the ways that I operate in the world. And then also being able to share that with other people and that there's this practice just to access what's present and that just the simplicity of that even just naming or noticing how we feel in a moment already taking us on that pathway towards healing just that even so
Yeah.
it's yeah, grateful.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Like, you know, you sent me a gift, a copy, and I sat down in my altar the other day and I was stirred up. Like, I was really, I had a little bit like your situation when you created this, or when you at least started the painting practice, like you had so many things happening simultaneously, like a heartbreak, a terror for the survival, and like psyche of your
Yes.
baby, starting a whole new business, which might sound really positive, but it is like one of the most vulnerable, tender, stressful things. So that there are lots of feelings happening simultaneously. And that was something that I really liked when I was working with it was there was room for all of them. I'd say, "Oh yeah, I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this, and I'm feeling this,"
Mm.
and then I like here's a good word and here's a good image, and I ended up like with six different images that ended up matching with six of the words. Like I went through a whole process of elimination, and then I realized that some of like three of them were like the places of distress, and three of them were like nesting images, nesting words that you could maybe talk about. And that was kind of funny too, like to just sort of put the puzzle pieces together to create a wholeness out of things that might seem paradoxical. Like how could I both be feeling anxious and well, I'm trying to think of what some of the words were, like and guarded at the same time, or whatever. I mean, I'm just giving you examples, but
Yeah.
I really, and for me, that's kind of like art too. Like on one canvas, you can have the devil and an angel, and they can
Mm.
coexist and dance, and there's no problem. And sometimes in our minds, we think, oh, we have to have this or we have to have that. And what I really loved about working with the cards just at my first try was that how all of my feelings could coexist. And I felt mirrored in my complexity in such a way that actually reduced the anxiety that I was feeling in my body.
Mm. Well said.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you started with the images. Is that right? That you chose images
Yeah, I started with
first?
the images and then I started working with the words and I want to say like the process of taking like the words came two at a time and on each
Mm.
side there's and I'm going to show people. I want people to see what we're talking about.
Mhm.
But like you have to pop the word out of the little holder. That was like so pleasurable for me for some reason, like popping the words out.
Satisfying.
And yeah, it was so satisfying. And then, you know, on both sides, there's a different word. So yeah, so I started with the images, then I started gathering words that I related to, and then I started, you know, like consolidating, like, and also that there's a refinement process. Like there's a difference between
Mhm.
like anxiety and fear, or that you could talk more about that, but I appreciated that opportunity to start to hone in more and more on the essence and say, yeah, it's that,
Mm,
but actually it's even more that. Or this word actually captures these three states all in this one word. So that was like really fun for me too. And then I started pairing the images and then I started rearranging the images and the words. And by the end, I felt so much better. I just, it may sound very simple, but I really felt better. And
mm,
also I wasn't trying to change how I felt. I was trying to identify how I felt. And that in itself was a really good lesson for me as someone who is very like change happy. It's like, oh, how can we turn this into something
yes.
really helpful or useful or better or whatever. So, yeah.
Oh, what a awesome description. Thank you, Rosie. Well, and I share the same experience with the practice that you do. Similar, very similar kind of practice. Everyone seems to use it a little bit differently. And
Yeah.
I've watched my son, and there's a video on my website of him doing it when he was about 12, very similar to what you did, except that I think he lined him up differently, which is, that's again, individual thing. But and he might have started. I think he started with images as well and then went through the feelings. And again, listening to his discernment about the words, like, oh, it's not quite this. It is this. No, I don't really feel this. And to listen to him process that was really remarkable. And and lots of people that I've seen use it this way to process like the feeling of dysregulation in the moment and go through that process allows it to just be present, like you described too, And I think we spend a lot of time being fragmented and disconnected from our bodies and emotional selves. And some of it is like necessity. We need to do the work of the day. We need to take care of our children or, really literally work to get food on the table. And it's not time to like spend in this processing of emotions. It's just not the right space for that. And so I think though then we become habituated to like avoid and stuff or all these other coping strategies that you and I share.
Mhm.
There's bottling, there's brooding, and obviously this forced positivity that we share. There's a lot of different ways that people cope. And so it is amazing to me too how much peace can come when we just have processed like nothing has changed in the situation, but it's like, oh, I've just sat with this. It's like that self-compassion practice too of like, oh, this is here and this is hard,
Yeah.
whatever, or this is I feel afraid, or I feel this thing. And it's almost like having someone listen to you. If you ever have a person that really sees and listens to you, what a gift that is. To be able to give that to ourselves, take a moment in that space is remarkable. I'm
It's so
so glad you
true.
had that experience.
Oh, it's so good. And when you're saying this, it makes me think about congruence and
Oh,
that boy
yes.
that you're describing, right? Who's having all of this rage or powerlessness or big feelings arising in him, but the word choice, the way he's thinking about it, is completely incongruent with the actual feeling, which is something I think all of us experience at different levels. And there's something about working with this tool that brings about congruence. Even,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I'm so glad you said, yes, I agree. Yeah,
And
you said
that's
it so well.
regulating. That's very regulating.
Oh, it is. Exact right. Yes. Well, and trauma, we all have trauma, I believe, but also people that have experienced like big T trauma in their life or kids that are, facing abuse and malnourishment, neglect, like significant things. The congruence, first of all, is not present for them a lot of times.
Yeah.
Like the adults that are supposed to keep them safe are the very people that are might be harming them. That's one example. But also within their own bodies, like they don't know, the fragmentation that happens as a result of trauma, it's very hard to trust the body. And so, and to even know what we're feeling. And so it is, I agree. And I'm glad that was your experience too, and that you reflected that back. The congruence is significant.
It is so significant. I'm so inspired. I know I want people to see what's in the box, but I want to say
Oh yeah.
one more thing, which is the other thing, often our feelings, like you're saying, because of trauma or conditioning, some feelings we judge or are
Yeah.
forbidden, right? We learn that there are
Yes.
forbidden
That
feelings.
too.
So if the task is just to find the accurate feeling, the question of whether it's allowed or not allowed, or good or bad, suddenly becomes kind of irrelevant. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, I ended up, one of my words was guarded. Now, that would be a very forbidden feeling for me to have as a kid, like to be self-protected, to have too much of a boundary, to be, that would be a very forbidden thing. But because I was really thinking, no, no, what's the right word for how I'm feeling? Oh, no, that's actually correct. Suddenly, in that moment, I sh shone a light on a shadow in a self-accepting way, and then it wasn't shadow anymore. I actually ended up putting it in the positive section of my little diagram that I spontaneously came up with. And I'm like, wow, how cool is that? That for me, in this case, in this moment, being guarded is a healthy thing.
Yes. Yes. So great. So well said. I know. Well, and I think just what you're saying, allowing feelings to be present is so critical for all of us that have been conditioned in a certain way. And I think our kids, with all the social emotional learning, might be like cognitively understanding that feelings that are unpleasant are okay, but I think they're still like labeled bad and good, and when people are angry, and especially if the adults in the room, in the family, in the school, whatever the thing might be, and a kid is exhibiting, outwardly angry behavior, and it's dysregulating to everyone else around them, and then that's like the reaction, like people can't hold my big feeling, like I'm scary to these people, like whatever the response is. So there's so much work here. It's like a richness, and the reason I just wanted to name the images too. The reason I started with the images, first of all, I like the metaphorical thinking. That's like my, creative, artistic way of things. And I was hesitant to put words in there, but again, I got the feedback from the people that were using
Mm.
it because I sometimes like the label, right, starts to create what you're describing, this story of what it means to be guarded, and instead of like, oh, like I see this like I'm thinking of this door, this like closed door. This is how I feel, like a closed door. Well, what's the reason that I feel the closed door? Not just that like I'm gonna say the word I'm guarded and then call it like a problem, right? That it's like,
Right.
oh, there's a reason this person is not safe, They've lied to me repeatedly, or, they're,
Yes.
you know, not trustworthy. Here's the door I was thinking about,
Yes.
So
I love that. I love that.
like a heavy door, is how I see this. So um yeah, I lost my train of thought on the
Well,
door.
you were concerned about the words adding a
Oh yes.
story. Whereas the
Yes.
metaphors are very kind of clean and we can project whatever we want into them. And as soon as you bring in the word, it
Yes.
could create like a spark of the conditioning messages about whether it's okay or not okay. And
Right. And the
that,
process that you described of being able to recognize like, oh, actually this is serving me, and this is
yes,
this is something that I need in my life right now. It's not that earlier story of something that I'm
right,
not being open, or, whatever the family story might be. That's like, oh, I choosing this, and I'm doing this in a
yes.
way that's serving me today.
And that's where the images come in because, like, I can see you choosing the word guarded in relation to the door, and that would be very
Hmm.
different than guarded in relation to the turtle or the tortoise, which is what I was working on, which actually helped me cultivate a very different relationship with that word. So there's
Mm,
something about I'm glad that you brought in the words, but I'm glad you have the images because it's
awesome.
it's through the dance between them that there are many more possibilities become arise. And even like bringing
Hmm.
in the color, like, oh, is this like a red? Is this a blue? Is it a yellow? I'm going to bring that in. Even just bringing that into my everyday life, I think will be really helpful. Just that very simple concept. Okay, let's do it.
Yes.
Let's show people
Okay,
what's in this box.
great.
And I want
Let's
them to
do
see
it.
your art because I love the images.
Oh, you're sweet.
I
I
love them. Oh no, it
thank
wasn't
you.
it wasn't a turtle. It was an armadillo. I'm sorry. It was an
Oh,
armadillo.
yes. I love the armadillo. It's one of
Love
my
the
favorites.
armadillo. It made me just love the word guarded. Like, how cute is
Yes.
that? And how natural and okay and healthy is that?
Well, and I'm so glad you brought this up. Armadillos are like my one of my greatest teachers. I worked in a camp in Florida a long, long time ago, and it was an alternative to jail program, and we had armadillos that would clunk around outside like at night. We lived in tents, so we built these shelters. Anyways,
Wow.
so armadillos were one of my first teachers about boundaries and learning, like, because I was navigating this. I was very young, and people were close to my age, that I was responsible for, and it was a tough, tough thing for me at that time. It's been the job that's been my biggest teacher my whole life, but and probably also like the planting the seed for these things too, right? Learning about trauma and dysregulation in myself and how I, as a dysregulated adult, is impacting the people around me without knowing it. Because I didn't have the language and I didn't have the skill at the time or the practices to regulate myself. But this armadillo, thinking about how they wear their armor on the outside, teaching me about boundaries. Yeah. And how it's healthy to have boundaries and to state them kindly, right? Like that's all the things that I was learning, these deep lessons about leadership at that time that were so, so hard for me and still are in a lot of ways. But it's a lifelong lesson, that one.
Yeah,
But
I do. But
yes.
now you've
Okay,
got
sorry. So back to
more
the box.
tools in your toolkit now. But I love that.
Yes.
So I'm just going to share some of the images for people just look at the images and see if any of them, if you relate to them, if they spark any thoughts or feelings, resonance, lack of resonance. This was one that I chose. What are the
Yeah, and I
associations?
often I've,
Yeah.
you were talking about, is it okay if I just add
Yeah, no,
thoughts?
I'm just going to do this and you talk.
Great. So a lot of times I've used the cards, just the cards in the toolkit for facilitating team building, or for a meeting at the entrance as a introduction, like, choose an image that represents how you're feeling as you show up today, and one of the boards that I work with, nonprofit boards, they started using these cards at the start of their meeting to show how they're all showing up, like each time, because they're making some big decisions about funding and community-based resources. And it's important that the rest of the board knows, like, what are we showing up with? How are we coming to this meeting today? And so that's a way that I've used the images that are, with groups that aren't just with an individual set. Oh,
No,
Mama
it's
Bear.
brilliant and it saves so much time than the 10-minute check-in per person. It
Yeah,
goes
well, and it
right to
just
the
gets a little
core.
deeper. Yeah, it's a little, and truly like that one, like the cactus, feeling, I feel prickly when I see that, and so that's the other thing. What does the image convey for you? What feeling shows up when you look at these images?
Exactly. And it cuts right through. It cuts right through all of the shoulds and should nots, and this is okay, this is not okay. It's like, yeah, this captures something for me today about how I'm feeling. And just
And
both the owning of it and then the sharing it and being witnessed
yeah.
in it.
Yes. Well, and some people have said like that have done this with me a few times, like I have no idea what this image is. Like they don't know what it is. And they're like, but this is how I feel. This is how I feel. Holding up like that one, for example. This is how I feel. The darkness, the swirls, like these sparks, like I don't know what this is exactly, what you intended it, that this is what it makes me feel.
Yes,
And so I think that's also the value that I've seen. It's really vulnerable for me having this out there in the world, these images that are less than perfect and not polished,
I love
and
them.
truly were a depiction of the feeling that I was having on any given day. So it was hard for me, and it still is sometimes, to have them out there because I'm critical, of myself and
Mm.
these images. Yet I've used them in all these groups and I hear the feedback of how people connect with them. And it's I think because the feelings are present in them that people are able to relate to them. And it's not about art. It's not about having created like an artwork. It's about this is a toolkit to help us connect with how we're feeling. Yeah, I love that
Mhm.
one.
Yeah, I mean they radiate authenticity.
Oh,
They're
thanks.
permission giving. They're
Oh, great.
relatable, right? Because this whole thing was born out of a human experience. And
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
feel that. People just feel that energetically. Like it's just I'm in love with these. And every time I look at them, I get a different association because I'm changing, right? We never step in the same river
Yes.
twice. We never approach these images. Oh, here's your calm little bluebird in your heart.
Yeah, there's my bluebird in my heart. Yeah.
And
Well,
now
I
when I
think
see
about
this
that.
one, I'm going to think about that. I'm
Yeah. Well, and
gonna,
it came to me this idea of walking through the woods, which is one of my most regulating activities, and hearing bluebirds and, that and seeing a bluebird fly across and like, or hearing, robins and all the rest of the birds singing their songs and thinking, boy, this is my window of tolerance when I feel most ready to receive feedback, to do something hard. And so, okay, well, what would this do for students, for staff, for administrators to be able to identify when they're in their window of tolerance and when they're not, and then how to get back? And so that's some of the other stuff in the toolkit.
yes, let me bring out some more. I could keep showing these, but what would you like me to show? Do you want me to show
Like the body mapping, we can show that the way that, yeah. So this is a small one. I have a downloadable one too, just that you can print, that prints on a um, regular piece of paper size.
Mhm,
And this comes with a dry erase marker too. So sometimes people just draw on the body with a dry erase marker. And
mhm,
it's sometimes the printable one, because it prints in a full size sheet, it just fits better with the size of the card.
mhm.
But they still work on here, people use them. But that dysregulating and the nurturing on the other side, this came out of the idea of, yeah, that's,
But
yes,
just
totally
to so
dysregulating.
see people can see, right? You pick
Yes.
something and you put it on the dysregulating and then maybe something nurturing. Maybe I'll do this for nurturing.
Yes.
Mm.
And also words, or other images that people draw. Like, one of the little girls that I was working with when we first were designing this in the classroom, on a piece of paper, I would just draw circles above the body and a nest underneath. So the same images, but just spread out on top of the same body.
Mhm.
And I created it like this in order to have a folding to be able to fit in the box.
Sure, sure.
But she just wrote the word no in one of those dysregulating with a huge exclamation. And she's a student that would just like run whenever she's told no. That is the most dysregulating thing for her. She knows
Mhm.
it, everybody else knows it. So then in that nest, we work together. What can we put in your nest that might help you to feel safe, to be able to start to tolerate hearing no? It doesn't mean that we never tell the student no, right? Like
Mhm.
that's also, I think, part of the finessing and nurturing of learning about trauma informed, or just the ways in which we hold each other's humanity,
Mhm.
is that we all become dysregulated for different reasons and we all have our things. And part of building resilience is learning how to get back to regulation. And it doesn't mean we live there in regulation. We all become dysregulated. But what's the things that we can put in our nest? Again, like for me, it's a walk in the woods, and I talk like this and just do this with my anyone, the adults or kids that I work with, that if we can start to cultivate this, then we can ask for what we need if we're a student or even an adult in a system, that doesn't have breaks, for example, at the time that I most need to take a washroom break. Like,
Mhm.
how can I, right? It's really dysregulating for me. I can't focus on my work. I can't, when I'm like on this clock, is it possible for me to, reschedule my breaks? Sometimes that's not possible, but just to start thinking in ways that honor people's humanity, that we all have these dysregulating states. We don't even
Mhm.
have to be impacted by like a big trauma, but to know that and start to build awareness in individuals and in the people around them, it just really it builds resilience in across the board. And then it ripples out, right? Because then again, the teachers that are teaching this to their kids, they're bringing that home to their families. It's just
Yeah.
kids are talking about it at home. It just becomes a ripple effect. I have some people that are using this that are couples, that are in
Yes.
relationship.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, and to be
Yes.
able to, some of them are, I don't know exactly. I'm so curious how they're using it, but they've sent me some photos of like, similar to you, like with the images and the words, and they're processing some conflict together, that they had and talking about, you can tell what's like sort of dysregulating and what, but that's their way of connecting through challenge, in their relationship and having something, sometimes the third object, right? The third thing outside of the two people can be really helpful to manipulate that so that you can focus on this third object almost, and it takes away some of that immediate frustration
Mm.
or
Then they're not
disgust, right? Whatever.
manipulating each other.
That too. I was thinking that, Rosie.
Yeah, and also what I love too is like first it's the self, it's the allowing, like it's the allowing
Yeah.
us to know how we feel and just the accepting of it, like just to be mirrored back in that, like whether it's this is my feeling, this is my image, my word, or I'm looking at yours in my group, or I'm looking at my partners, and then it's kind of I'm just thinking like it when you were talking, it sort of leads to this process of getting to action. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's the, like getting underneath it, like, then what's the need? Like this whole thing about the nesting, right? So, like,
Yes.
these are my feelings. This is where I'm dysregulated. That's okay. We all get dysregulated, right? So, this is my particular way of expressing my dysregulation right now. But then, as we allow it and we accept it and we look at it, we're mirrored by it, and other people are witnessing and they're not wanting to kill us for it, then it's like, oh, okay, what's something that I could what's just an image that might make me feel safer in this moment so that I could even be with my dysregulating image a little bit longer without falling apart. And then it's like, oh, like what would actually be an action in my everyday life that might
Yes.
represent this holding, this nesting, right? Just like you were saying, well, it could be as simple as yeah, I need to reschedule my breaks during the day because I'm realizing that, I handle no's much better if I can go to the bathroom and spend a couple of minutes by myself and just lick my wounds and get back, feel more like I'm okay. I'm not being rejected or kicked out of the tribe or whatever is getting activated through that
Yes.
no. I'm
Yes.
I'm blending too many things together, but anyway, I
No, but
just
you're right on. And
yeah,
well, but I think that's the gift of this too, is that it does like blend all of it's a tool, right?
it's a
And
tool.
it's all of the ways that we show up to it with what we our experiences. And if you have none, right, and you're just coming at it like I know the words sad, mad, happy, and that's maybe it, right? Then okay, let's just like explore and maybe we just start with like again those like colored little images, and I have an example on my website, like what does it look like for you if you're in like on a pleasant mood, and medium or low energy, like green, what does it look like? And then just choose all the images and what might be some feeling words. Well, I don't know any of these words. I don't know what this means. Well, let's look them up.
Yeah.
Let's start with the body sensation. What might it feel like if I was in this green space? Like I'm open, I'm ready to learn. I'm not too high energy, but I'm not like sleepy or falling asleep. Like and map that, and then just start to build some awareness with ourselves. There's a few adults that have used the toolkit like that really didn't grow up knowing a lot of emotions, and it's just not in their vocabulary or their
Yeah.
experience, but they want to expand, and
Yes.
so they can, right? And this is a way to do it with manipulatives that also, as you're saying, you have like a reaction to the image or in a personal story or feeling with that might be different from you to me, and that's all welcome, which is the
Yes.
exact same way with our emotions and our experiences with anything in the world that might be regulating for somebody might be dysregulating for somebody else. So again, it's really
Mm.
accessible, I think, across.
So true. And expands everybody's repertoire, like
Yeah.
everybody's. It expands us for ourselves. And when we share that and our witness, suddenly other people's repertoire also expands because they're like, oh my God, you could see that and feel that. I never really thought of that before. I can also remember that that's a possibility for me. And then there was something too, like you were saying earlier, how now people are kind of creating their own images for their classes,
Yeah.
which is another, I think another natural outgrowth of this core creative process that began this whole thing, that it is inspiring creativity in everyone who encounters it at whatever stage they're in. And whether it's the creativity of moving from sad, mad, glad to like, oh, guarded, anxious, prickly, that's one creative process to like, okay, now our whole
True.
class is going to come up with our own images and make up our own words and suddenly have our own lexicon for emotions that we can use and build upon together. And I think that is happening naturally and organically because of this seed that you planted at the very beginning by honoring your own emotional landscape during a difficult time. And I just want to honor you for that. Yeah,
Thanks. Well, it was such a gift to me. I'm 43 and, this is a couple of years ago that I was doing this. So I've gone through a lot of life, not just being in my feel integrating my
yeah,
feelings and to be in a practice of integrating. Now I do that so much more of the time that that's more the majority of my life than it is to do the other
yeah,
coping strategies that it's such a gift. I would love for other people to be able to experience
yeah.
and live in this way that's it's not like peaceful and happy all the time. It's just integrated. I'm not trying to make my life different all the time, make my inner world different. It's just an acceptance and surrender, like you, I think, said earlier. So
So
yeah, I have a lot of
beautiful.
gratitude.
Well, I'm definitely going to want other people to get this. And just so you can see,
Oh yeah.
there's this tin, and it says body sensations and emotion words. It's backwards for me, but then this is when you take all the words and you pop them out of those little containers, and then you see the word on both sides. Oh, here's my guarded
Yeah.
and
And the
hopeful.
body sensation, I put a little body image to go with it, just as a
Ah,
way to differentiate from the
yes.
emotion word to the body
Can you see
sensation. Yeah.
that? Is that
Yeah.
it's a little
I kind of,
blurry?
it's a little blurry,
It's a little like
but we called it out.
spacious.
So, mhm.
Anyway, there's like a whole box full of these phenomenal, such good words like shut down and safe and center. And I love how there's no agitated. Yeah, so what's agitated versus anxious? It's interesting to just be thinking about that.
It is.
And what I love is there's no hierarchy. They're all equal.
Yes.
All
Yes,
feelings are welcome and
they
okay.
are.
Uneasy, right? Uneasy, agitated, anxious.
Hmm.
There's a refinement invitation right there. Lonely, giddy.
Hmm.
I love that one. So anyway, this is fantastic. And then like you were showing there, you've got your little people of the four colors. And I'm going to
Hmm.
start playing with this now that I understand it better. Um,
I think I've tried to put some videos on my website showing how to use them. And then on my Instagram too, I have some examples of people
great.
using them in these different ways. So if you were just to like click, you could see an image of somebody who's mapped out green, yellow, red, blue for their own, like all on a desktop, so there's some examples out there and I would love to hear like more, so as you use it or anyone else, and just share with because that's the fun part about a toolkit is that it's not prescribed. There's the suggested ways to use it, in these different, like we were just describing ways when you're dysregulated or if you're just trying to learn or exploring or processing with a kid. But then other people are just creating their own ways to use it. And the more we share that, then other people can learn from that, right? So it helps everybody. So I welcome all the uses to be shared.
Wonderful. Yeah, we're all expanding our repertoire with our little armadillo cutie pie. And yeah, so I'm going to make sure people can have your website address and have, your Instagram so they can follow you and see these examples and then maybe add their own examples over time. And
Great.
before we bring our time to a close, I do want to ask you about steady leadership and your
Oh,
work with
yes.
that. And maybe there's a bridge. Maybe you want that, maybe there's a bridge between this toolkit and everything that went into creating this, and then how you moved into wanting to work with leaders and why you think these times require our learning how to stabilize ourselves inside as leaders. And
Yeah.
many ways in which we do that doesn't have to be the obvious ways. So I'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I work with a lot of leaders and helping them and their teams become stronger and more resilient. And this course that I created, Leading with Steady Presence, which is available, it's on my website as well. Came out of working and talking and listening to leaders who are telling me things like, I have money that I can hire somebody to be my assistant, which I desperately have needed for all this time. And yet I don't have enough time or space to just write the job description. Or
Mm,
I can like staff a, bonus for this group of staff that have done this amazing thing, and I want to pay them a bonus. I'm planning to pay them a bonus, and I just don't have time to like make it happen and issue the bonus. Things like this that where there's really good things that they could be doing and they can't even make space for that. And then the things that they don't want to do but need to get done are definitely not getting done. Like, I have 300 emails and one of them is from the this funder for my nonprofit, and I have missed it. And it was 2 weeks ago, and I still haven't responded. And they're like one of our biggest funders. Those kinds of things that struck me as I was building a community-based practice with a friend, a colleague called Radical Hope, where we were gathering
Mhm.
online weekly. And this was this really beautiful community we created. And I thought these leaders also feel really alone and they could really benefit from knowing that there's all these others that are saying exactly almost the same thing, just in different language. They need capacity, they need space. And it would be beautiful to create this community. But then as I reflected, it seemed like there's no way that I'd be able to get them to sign up for a community like this when they don't have the time. And so I created this self-paced course, Leading with Steady Presence, that really just cultivates a lot of what we've been talking about, building that awareness,
Mhm.
what's present in order to pause. Like I am hooked by something that's causing me to react. So I'm going to pause, building in practices to know how to pause, a lot of breath work. So it's
Mhm.
an experiential practice-based course that leads the participant over 6 weeks time. It's dripped. The course is dripped over 6 weeks. Every week
Okay.
there's new content. But the purpose of it is to build a habit of practice just 15 minutes a day. So sometimes the 15 minutes might be listening to a video and then engaging in a mindfulness practice, or it might be reflecting on something, it
Mhm.
might just be practicing on your own. But the weaving of the course, the pathways through this getting unhooked, self-compassion, and then building the ability to widen the view and hold complexity so that we
Mhm.
can see opposing views and reduce our desire to collapse nuance and hold more complexity, which is what we were talking about earlier with
Wow.
your process of holding all the complexity of your feelings. So it's the idea of practicing along the way and then building this ongoing practice into our lives.
One thing I really admire in you is you take things that could normally be experienced as overwhelming, like really big ideas or really big healing processes that could take years and decades or all this stuff, but you break it down into these very doable, understandable, accessible, practical tools or journeys or processes. Like even
Mm.
and in a way you create, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but it's like you put the wisdom in the package or the form that's actually going to meet the need of the person you're trying to serve. So if you have like,
Oh, what a
right, like if
compliment. Thank you.
well, think about if you have leaders who can't even make the time to receive a donation, then you could make the most beautiful course that requires, few hours a week, and they're not going to show up. They're not going to come. So you're like, how can I give them what they need in a way that actually will nurture them, but not overwhelm them, not add to the problem, but actually provide them with solutions? And I just want to honor you
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really my hope, and it's hard with an online course, just like you're saying, because it is one more thing. It is something you have to commit to and do. Same with coaching. I do a lot of coaching, and the people that commit to it sometimes will say, like, oh my gosh, I have been looking forward to this all week, and I don't have time for this, like, so, but yet they show up, and that's the same idea is that we have to show up and practice something different. If we want something different, we
Yeah.
have to practice something different. And that's hard for people, and yet it doesn't have to be huge, right? There are tiny tweaks we can make, and that's exactly what you said so well. And thank you. And that's the purpose is to try to exactly meet people where they're at and follow the signs and the need, right? Similar to the Katydid cards. It was like responding to a need.
Yeah.
I really want to help these little guys as well as their teachers, and I want to help systems be more regulated. Like, how do I do that with what we have? Because sometimes this is the other thing that people want like a 1, 2, 3 step thing. This is a lot of like curriculum is organized around on this day teach this, on this day teach this, on this
Mm,
day teach this. Even social emotional learning, which is obviously, if I'm having conflict, but we don't get to conflict until third quarter,
right.
but I'm having the conflict right now. I need to like, and the teacher's like, well, you just have to wait until third quarter when we get to conflict. Like, that doesn't actually serve anyone. So if we can actually learn to embody this stuff on a regular basis, we
Mhm.
can be responsive to what shows up. This is not the same as like a science curriculum, learning about our emotions and the ways that and even leadership. I think when I think about all these leaders and the deep, you know, angst and complexity that we're all facing in the world today that is only deepening these tensions and the divides and the chronic, intractable conflicts that seem to be growing day by day. We have to build this steadiness and this way, this inner resource so that we are able to show up for whatever comes. That we aren't saying, oh, once I complete this workshop, then I'll know what to do. It's like, no, I know that I need to practice my breath calming every day so that when somebody comes at me irate in my face, I can also then deepen into my breath just naturally. That is something that I've been practicing, deep breathing, and I'm regulating my own nervous system and then co-regulating with that person in front of me. And what a gift that is to the people around us. That's a really simple practice that people forget that we have access to this very little thing in our body, breath. Very simple. So yeah, so I think it's like being responsive to the challenges of our time seems so obvious, and yet we can overcomplicate things and or collapse it into three-step process. So again, it's like this nuance of it's not incredibly complicated. It's a matter of practicing these things.
Mhm.
And there's no quick fix three-step process that's going to just make you a more calm, responsive leader.
Oh my God, this is really, I'm having so many like inspiring thoughts as you're talking. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's no quick fix. It's not a linear game. You're like truly resourcing people. You're
Yes.
resourcing us so that we can meet the moment with capacity. And so, yes, there's no
Yes.
quick fix, but what you're actually doing is offering tools that are pretty simple and quick if we just show up for them, right? Like it could be, for example, every day I just pick an image that reflects how I feel. That
Yes.
is pretty quick. And that will have an impact on me. If I do that every single day and I wake up in the morning or right before I'm about to have a meeting that I'm nervous about, or I'm about to talk to someone I've had a conflict with, and all I do is just pick a card
Hmm.
and just breathe for literally like 3 breaths, that's going to impact my life.
Hmm.
That's going to really impact my life. So yes, it's not easy necessarily to show up for the simple tool that over time, when practiced, becomes inbuilt. But
Yes.
when we can do that, thank God you've given us simple tools. Like you've given us things that are very doable and manageable. Like if every time I'm like, oh, I got to show up, and it's like, ugh, I got to show up for an hour-long process, chances are I'm
Yeah,
not going to
no.
show up, right? So
Right.
you're making it as tempting and motivating as possible to show up for a practice that will have long-term uh, gains for people and with flexibility. They have flexibility so people can play with it, right? They can play with it. They can find the way that works for them and use it in so many different contexts, which you're also sharing about. So I like that combination of the simple, profound tool that is a completely adaptable, that evokes the creativity in the individual and is accessible and very practical and actually easy to show up for. Like you're giving us as much as we can
Mhm.
to be able to become those regulated leaders or humans or relators. So I really want
I
to
hope so.
yeah,
Thanks,
no, you're doing
Kathy.
great. And I have ideas. Like I would so love to have something like this for our curriculum. So
Well, yeah, you
I'm
said
gonna,
that there's body connections in all of your
oh
work,
yeah.
so that's
Every module
yeah,
has a body, mind, heart, spirit piece to it. And
so beautiful.
yeah, no, this is very, very, very connected. And I can see, I was thinking too, like we have the 12 categories of the warriors and the healers and the unifiers and the messengers and the leapers. Like these very kind of big human condition archetypal experiences that we have. And I thought we could have like maybe like a little thing for each of those things. Like, is this right? And like
Yes.
mixing. So I have some ideas, but we can talk more about that another time. For
Neat.
now,
I love it.
I just want to say thank you for your work. Thank you for trusting in the thread of your passion. And thank you for being courageous and sharing your artwork with the world, even though it always
Thank
feels
you.
tender and vulnerable. It
It,
does.
yes.
That's like the big, that's like, that's really showing up. So
It's
thank you.
so scary, right? It's
Um,
so, for me, it is. Yeah.
oh, yes, for me too. I'm telling you, I'm doing the song thing. I'm like, oh my God, I only sing in the shower. It's like this is gonna be crazy. I'm
Oh,
gonna be like trying to regulate myself with your cards, like when the songs come out. I'm
yes.
gonna be like, oh,
Yes.
how do I
Please
want
send
to
me
feel? How do I
when the
feel?
leader comes out. Yeah, please send
Yes,
it to me because I can't wait to listen.
I will. I will totally. It's gonna be inspired by a Lakota song. We're
Oh, that'll be
yeah, we're working
beautiful.
with a medicine man here in Santa Fe, and he's such a beautiful voice. So I will definitely let you know about it. So is there anything else you want people to know? Otherwise, I will make sure they get your website, your Instagram handle, and all that stuff.
That's lovely. Thanks so much for having me, Rosie. I love this conversation.
Mm, me too. Very inspired by you.
Likewise.
Um,
Yeah, I'm so happy to know you. What a
yes,
treat that we shared gathering day together, you know?
so true. I mean, see, life does give us what we need. But
Yes.
thank you. Thank you so much. And we will be in touch.
Great. Thank you, Rosie.